On the 26th of November, 2006, I received information from a source that Adnan al-Dulami was going to be the target of a raid conducted by elements of Jaish al-Mahdi. The source was asking for some sort of escort for Adnan al-Dulami into the international zone. I told the source such things were difficult to arrange, especially on such short notice. The source offered to contact one of the deputy prime ministers and arrange for an escort into the international zone and begged for response from coalition forces. Normally, we report such things in a salute report via phone or email over secret lines and follow it up later with reporting based on how much information we have. However, I realized Adnan al-Dulami was an influential Sunni in the Iraqi government. When I also heard that the Jaish al-Mahdi elements were being supported by Shias in the Iraqi security forces throughout the area, I decided to maintain close communication with both the MNDB G2 battle captain and my source. I wanted to paint a picture for the battle captain if he decided to respond. After both the spot and salute reports were transmitted, I regained contact with my source to find out the status of the raid. I was told coalition forces had shown up in the area and were unable to locate the Jaish al-Mahdi elements due to their ability to blend in with the locals in the area and their connection with Iraqi security forces. I also found out that the deputy prime minister was sending a PSD team to help out Adnan al-Dulami and bring him safely into the international zone, but it had not yet arrived in the area. I found out more information concerning the personnel conducting the raid and the coalition responding force. I recontacted the MNDB G2 battle captain and relayed the information my source had provided. I relayed information 3 or 4 times total for a little under an hour. The final time I called my source, I was thanked for helping. I told the source I would call to set up a meeting soon to discuss what had happened in person.
I think there's 2 ways to answer that. You always got to look at it from the general populace and how they either reject something or embrace something, as well as the shot callers and how they approach it. I think that distinction is important.
Pandemic treaty or WHO on any of our channels, Rumble, YouTube, wherever, and we go through the documents so that you can see for yourself that the World Health Organization wants to take away freedom from all member states and instate their own rules and laws over to the WHO. This is currently being read in the Senate. If this does not pass, it will be up to the next president, based on their own whim, to decide whether we sign the pandemic treaty with the WHO or not. I'm fairly certain that Kamala Harris would sign it. I'm fairly certain Donald Trump would not.
They are not rules prescribed by the sovereign to the subject, but agreements between sovereign and sovereign. The power in question seems therefore to form a distinct department and to belong properly neither to the legislative nor the executive. The qualities elsewhere detailed as indispensable in the management of foreign negotiations point out the executive as the most fit agent in those transactions, while the vast importance of the trust and the operation of treaties as laws plead strongly for the participation of the whole or a portion of the legislative body in the office of making them. So what's he saying here? He's saying you can't make laws, domestic laws, using a treaty. Treaties can't bind the United States to declare war. Treaties can't raise taxes. Treaties can't create new laws for us. And the United States should not take part in international institutions that erode our sovereignty. Congress should not legitimize blatantly unconstitutional notions that agreements that come out of these institutions supersede the Constitution of the United States. So let me just close by saying this. Do we believe that the Senate itself and the president, without consulting the House, could implement a vaccine mandate by merely calling it a treaty and finding another sovereign party to enter into with? I do not. Do we believe that they could implement or impose social distancing on U.S. citizens by calling it a treaty and finding another sovereign to enter into an agreement with? I do not. They have to come to the House. Let's take the example of gun control. Do we think they could impose gun control on U.S. citizens in a treaty? By the way, this is not a hypothetical, in a treaty with the United Nations and some other sovereign countries, merely with the advice and consent of the Senate. That would take 2/3 or 67 votes in the Senate, but it would completely leave out the House of Representatives. No, they cannot do that. That is outside of our Constitution. We are guaranteed a Republican form of government with a legislature that makes the laws that bear on citizens. So I'll close with this most important part of my amendment, which says, if any provisions of a treaty are to have legal bearing on United States citizens, those provisions must pass both the House of Representatives and the Senate and be presented to the President, as all federal laws must.
That guy don't.
My face. Now let's hear what he says.
For sure. I mean, I think all of us have to come to grips with legacy media is just not as important as it thinks it is. It is to you, it is to me. That's a relatively small group of people who rely on us for their information. And you have to go into the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And basically, the way people get information is shattered into 20, 30 different pieces. And so if you just look empirically at the numbers, Joe Rogan's more.
I direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve.
This isn't about that. This is about Hollywood and their reaction to it, the mistakes they made during it. Namely, that they picked a side, that joining in with something...
Talking about that balance between good times and bad times, and the lessons that we take from each. I heard a quote recently that said, "Every man knows reflection and introspection when he's at his lowest." Bad times, you can't do anything other than wallow in retrospective assessment. But one of my favorite things I've learned from you is when things are going well, given that that's presumably what you want to have more of, maybe worth deconstructing that.
Yes. I